wanting attention, just like the 5-year-olds, Lindsay.
Yeah.
Okay, we are streaming live on YouTube.
Great, thank you, Sarah.
Whoop.
All right, well, great. So this is the Bike and Pedestrian Committee meeting on Wednesday, September 23rd, and we will call the meeting to order at 4:33. And we have with us today our members. So folks, I don't see that we have any other attendees, but we are also recording for Channel 18. So we've been advised to be sure we introduce all of the members, or they introduce themselves so people know who we are. And then, you know, also if it's unclear who's speaking at the time, you might say your name. If we have any votes, we are to do a roll call vote. Were any of you able to attend the meeting the other night for new members, or if you hadn't already?
I did.
Yeah.
Yes, I did.
Yeah, terrific. Right, Peter. So we would, if we have any votes, we take a roll call vote, which is simply to identify your name and then say how you vote.
Alice,
So-
before we start, who's secretary today?
I think Stephanie is going to
I
be.
am. Yes,
Okay.
I am
Terrific.
busily writing here.
Yeah, that's great, Stephanie. And then you can email me your draft when you're ready. And I usually am able to kind of like add or embellish if necessary. And so it is a little bit of a community project, but thank you for taking.
Sounds good.
So today we have Peter Allgear here, Stephanie Gaskell, Joan Francolini, Lindsay Goodman, and I'm the chair, Alice Thomason Vanu. And our first agenda item is the public comment. And has anyone received any, are there any attendees? There don't seem to be any attendees, although I know Libby was going to try to join us, but doesn't seem as though we have any public here to make any comment. But the next item is communication. So did anyone receive any communications that need to be shared with the group from email, calls, or spoken communications? No. Okay, great. So I will have a motion to approve minutes of August 25.
Approved.
Okay, Joan will make the motion. A second.
I'll second.
Lindsay,
Lindsay.
is there any discussion on those minutes? Okay, so we will approve the minutes. All those who approve, please say aye.
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 Okay, so it's unanimous from all members, Joan, Peter, Stephanie, and Lindsay, and myself. And there are no nays because we're unanimous, so that's great. So the most important thing on our agenda is to hear from Joan and Stephanie, who have been working to try to prepare some recommendations for application for the Community Preservation Fund and for this next grant cycle. And I'm going to turn the meeting over to you guys. And I just want to remind you that anything that we apply for would have to fit in the domain of our charge and also in the domain of the recreation bailiwick of the funds, the criteria for that. So take it away.
Okay, so Stephanie and I both actually sit on CPC. I sit on it as a member at large, and Stephanie is representing.
Open space.
So,
Okay.
so you have both of us there, and I also sit on the rec committee. So there's a nice kind of going on.
Synergy.
So the one thing you should know, we can go through the projects, but October 5th, the application becomes available online. And then it's due November 23rd. So those are the dates we're working with. So I was gonna send out these notes, but after going to the meeting on Monday, realized we can't send out the notes because they weren't done in time. So you'll have to go along with us instead of reading along. So Stephanie and I met a couple of times to review the projects that we thought that could be funded from Complete Streets. Because that's really where we're taking our direction from in terms of bikes. And the only projects that are eligible for CPC funding is bike paths or modal roads. No sidewalks are allowed, no crossing signals or anything. It has to be bike related or modular use, shared use. And we could also apply for funds for surveys or engineering studies. So what happened was actually Stephanie did a phenomenal job. She met with Tom Daly and George Survey just to get input on the ideas we thought we could take forward, because we sort of segregated them based on what was strictly bike path. And we talked to Walter North, and the other thing we did is we talked to some residents on Baker Pond Road to see what they would think of, the one idea we think could be viable. So the two projects that really align with CPC funding is West Road, which is numbers P29, P18, and P20. And that is all from Complete Streets. And that has to all do with fixing that whole intersection on the West Road once you come off the bike path. And we'll go over the cost estimate and what the advice we got from Tom. But what was in the proposal for the Cape Cod Commission was $36,000. But we're not so sure what that includes. And Steffi and I did some digging on that. And the other bike path that actually has the people from Baker's Pond Road very excited is putting in for the Bay Ridge Road extension. And that is the extension that will take you from 6A to the bike path down by Baker's Road, Baker's Pond Road. And that came in at about $191,000. And Stephanie and I are aligned that these two would be good projects. They fit the criteria for CPC funding. They were in the Complete Streets, and they got a lot of buy-in. We also talked to just from the town members and from community members, and from the rec committee also, because I did ask the rec committee what they thought about these streets. And those are really the only two that were pretty clear about what we could do bike path-wise.
Yeah, so
We did talk to
the
Tom about
the
Yes,
one
sir.
that was the Salty Ridge, that one is P41.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Yeah,
Everybody's
P41. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry.
And,
Bay Ridge Road is P41.
okay, well,
Oh, I'm sorry. I got the wrong one. I'm sorry, Pay Ridge. Wait a second. Let me see if I can find it. Oh, I don't know where I put it.
was just trying to,
That's the one that's 191,700.
Yes, that's
That's it.
191,000.
Yeah.
It's P41.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. We did talk about Beach Road and Tonsit Road, but really those are long range plans. And what we did here is if you go down the path of building a sidewalk, you cannot build a bike path or a multi-use path. A multi-use path has to be 8 to 10 feet wide. It's a big ask. People support it. They don't say don't give up on it, but we really have to look at that as a long-term project. Nothing even that you could put in for an engineering study for right now.
which one is that, Joan?
If you look at Beach Road,
Yeah.
all the way, we called it water to water from Skakit down to Nauset. Stephanie had done such great work. We got the study that was done in 2011. George did a study in 2016. This thing has really been studied. And to make that even feasible, it has to have some different thinking. They did on Beach Road, I ride that a lot. There's a decent amount of room there right now to bike ride. Compared to what it used to be, it's amazing. And you can't just build it on one side, so there's a lot. So we think we need to take that off the table for now and think about it in another way. Although it's a nice ask, it's too big. And then Tom,
when it was repaved, actually, Tom worked with us and, tried to get as much shoulder as pavement would allow, and it has improved. I think right now, what seems to be problematic there is even with the solar speeding cart is the speeding. And
right.
The amount of traffic on that road is really significant.
And we asked Tom if we can reduce the speed, and he said, no, you can't do that. It's a state road. But we'll tell you some of our action plans afterwards, because there's some really good resources he suggested we talk to.
Great.
The other thing is Tonsett Road is going to be a really tough road to do anything on. It's too narrow for a bike path. And a sidewalk, then you would actually knock out any opportunity to bike because the road would become smaller. So the recommendation is to hold off on those, although we do think that those are great priorities for walking and biking. But we just don't have the resources we would need right now to even determine if you need an engineering study done.
Mhm.
So
So Joan, I wanted to tell me when you think I should come in on explaining Plan B for with the ADA funding.
oh, good. You can do that now because then we'll go to next steps on these.
Okay, all right. When we realized that that really a sidewalk is not an appropriate use of CPC funds, we'd gone to one of the things that you had assigned me, Alice, was to take a look at what handicap funding is available
Yes.
within. So I had looked through all like private funding groups. They only will support something in another private setting, like they won't do anything for municipalities. But the state does have a program, and the state program has grants. Now they have the grants come in two different steps. The first is a planning grant, and then the second is a project grant. So you first apply for the planning grant, and when you apply for the planning grant, if and when you get that, then they will provide the funds for you to plan your walkways throughout town for handicapped access. So it's something that the town wouldn't have to put funding up for again, since we've already done it studies twice. It would be done by state funds. Then once you get the result of that state fund, that plan, you can then use the plan to go to the state and ask for funds to implement some of the things on the plan. It doesn't have to be the entire plan in 1 year. You can pick and choose. Say they give you 10 different things that should be done. You can pick out one section of it. Their limit per year is $250,000 in funding. And so you can take like a section of land if we wanted to do it along Main Street or somewhere else in town, and then those funds can be used for that construction.
So I'm guessing that's up to 250,000 that you could apply for, right, Stephanie?
Each year.
Yes.
Each year, and you can subdivide your projects into $250,000 blocks, and each year you can get the 250,000. So I thought that the biggest problem with that is that for this year, the planning grant, you have to have your application in by October 9th. So I went to various people in town today. Actually, he just called me back today. I've had the call in for weeks, and you know how his voicemail said he was on vacation, the man in charge of all this. So he just got back to me today. So I didn't have too much time to work this out. But I did speak or get messages from George with answers to some of my questions. He said that I asked who it is in the town that would give you the authorization to go to apply for a state grant. And he said it is the town administrator. Now, the town administrator, is that the same as the town manager? Is that John Kelly?
Yes, and actually, you know, the process that you're describing is exactly what we've been doing with Complete Streets. So we first applied for the planning grant. They call it a technical assistance grant. We received that grant, and that's how we've been able to hire the Cape Cod Commission to do the planning, which is resulted in the map, the ranking sheet. It included the facilitation of the meeting in December. It will include a facilitation of the meeting in November. So this is excellent investigative work that you guys have done. And here's something that we might want to think of. It probably is a little premature and kind of late in terms of the October deadline. However, you know, ideally, what we'd like to be able to do is to combine various funding sources, including the federal money that flows to the town for, you know, maintenance and infrastructure annually, perhaps some town funding if the voters agree to subsidize some of this work, et cetera, and the Complete Streets Grant, because the Complete Streets Grant, as you know, is up to $400,000 a year. And when you look at the costs of some of those projects on our list, you know, the response is, yikes, how are we ever going to get this done? Now, I guess my question on this would be, is this grant, Stephanie, specifically an ADA grant? So is it in, you know, what sort of bailiwick of Mass dot or Mass dot?
Yes, it is. It is an ADA grant. Yes.
Yeah, because you know what and the Cape Cod Commission should know the answer to this. So what we can do is today try to formulate some research questions that they can help with. A research question that I would have is, can the planning that we've done for Complete Streets suffice in identifying the request for funding under the ADA grant? It might. You would think that you wouldn't have to go through the, you know, the same processes to the same entity, you know.
Except that, well, you know, it would be nice, but I would think that what an ADA grant is going to do, it's going to be very specific for ADA access.
Well,
And
actually-
the inventory that we have really doesn't spell that out, but a study that would come for an ADA grant, I think would be much more specific for what we were talking about.
And that's a really good question. All of the Complete Streets projects have to meet ADA requirements. That's
Right.
a given. Any state-funded projects are supposed to meet ADA requirements. That's another given. So, but, you know, so these are really good research questions. I think we should ask, you know, the Cape Cod Commission, if we were to go after this ADA money, which I think is absolutely something we should do, can we leverage some of the planning we've already done, or would they advise us to go ahead and apply for the planning grant that's specifically under this, right?
Yeah, and I
Okay.
think, well, Stephanie and I, when we're looking at it, it looks like the estimates that were given are about $1 million a mile. And it's a straight formula for every project. And so we do need to talk to the Cape Cod Commission to know what else was in the projects we want to look at and what did they assume. Because talking to Tom, he thinks we might actually need an engineering study funded this year before we can move to the project stage. But no one's really sure of what was in those estimates other than, you know, something they're allowed to use for doing street projects. But that number was pretty consistent through every project. So Alice, if you give us who we should talk to from Complete Streets, Stephanie and I could talk to them and talk about all these topics, because for the CPC.
Yeah. I think what we should do is we should formulate together as a committee the questions that we may want to pose in this regard under this topic, that we can put to the Cape Cod Commission. One of the things that we need to be sure we don't do, and even I'm very mindful of this, is for all of us to be bombarding the Cape Cod Commission on topics that, you know, overlap and sort of.
Well, that's why I mean, I think there's two things. So we can't really work offline on questions. We learned that on Monday. So,
well,
and we're in a sort of time thing. So we could maybe talk about the key questions we need answered from them on the CPC grants, and that's fine. We have those questions. Because we would want to have all of our ducks in a row so that when we get the application October 5th, we're ready to complete it to the best of our knowledge.
yeah, so in terms of, yes, you can submit questions online. You could submit them to the chair or to the vice chair or to both of us. We're not a quorum. and I would advise to both of us. We did that actually just the other day as planning board members. We were each submitted to George 2 questions that were then on the agenda last night for discussion with the Finance Committee and the Chamber of Commerce. So we could have everybody who has questions, and you two would have probably the most, you've been doing the most thinking about this, is to send those questions, and then I can send them on to both George Meservey and Lev Malikoff at the Cape Cod Commission to ask them, for answers to these. That would be the better process for doing that. And in terms of contacting John Kelly, the protocol that they're asking for is the same, is that the things go through the chair or the vice chair, so that, he's not being bombarded by 6 or 8 different people from the committee with
Right.
similar kinds of questions.
No, that makes sense. We weren't
Yeah.
going to John, but Tom did spend a good hour or so with us. He was very engaged. And Tom actually thought we should go talk to the traffic safety team and see if we can get on their agenda. Alice, you might know who they are.
Yeah.
And see if we can get on their agenda. And there's someone on that team who, Doug is his name, who they think is just a wealth of information. Do you know Doug?
I don't know Doug personally, Doug Prentice, somebody else.
Yes. Yeah, they said, maybe we could talk to him. He's advising on complete streets for Massachusetts. That was his career.
Right. So he's a new member of Traffic and Parking Committee. So I have
Mhm.
not met him. And Scott McDonald chairs that committee. I've attended many of their meetings to try to intertwine their efforts with ours. So that's all really great. Great. Most of what we've discussed along the way to launch the Orleans involvement in complete streets, they've been apprised of as over the last, year and a half or so. And Lindsay, you attended one of their meetings too, I think, didn't you? Or a couple?
Yep, there were a couple of them, yep.
And Scott really appreciates when our membership participates with them, because our work is so intertwined with what they're doing. They call it traffic and parking, but honestly, it's really more about safety and, mobility.
Okay, so we thought, listening to the great advice we got from Tom, that we should try to at least maybe get on their agenda for their next meeting to take them through these couple of projects that we're recommending going forward with Stephanie and I. Because really, those are the only 2 projects that will fall within CPC funding. There's no other projects on complete streets that would fall within it. And with the rec committee, we would recommend bundling all together as one big ask under rec. So it'll be rec and bike, and there's actually the cultural center. Cultural committee might be working on the band shell. So it'll be one big combined sort of ask. And Kevin Galligan has told us on rec, go big. So they're looking for some big ideas.
I don't have figures for the other projects, but if if we're looking at $250,000 just for West Road and Bay Ridge, that's a lot of money.
No, because you could bond, Alice, they can decide to bond, and if you bonded for, I think 100, I don't know how the number's correct, 1.2 million, it's only $100,000 a year. And we were advised to go big. So you can go in and you can list out all the projects, and then they could decide if they want to bond or if they want to go after smaller projects. But, now's the opportunity, because it has been on the last town meeting that everyone is pretty supportive of all these activities.
Yeah, and honestly, I don't know who probably it's the chair of the Community Preservation Fund Committee that would know how realistic it is to seek a
It's realistic.
bond for.
It's realistic.
Mhm.
From the feedback we got, it's realistic.
Yes, and one of the speakers that we had at our last CPC meeting was Alan McLennan, who was the former selectman for so many years. And he was explaining the use of bonding and how the town had not used it nearly enough, that it was a wonderful tool for the town to improve its infrastructure greatly, but that the town of Orleans has not used it.
So
Am
can
I
you
getting
just-
that right, Joan?
Yes.
That's what.
Correct.
So
Yeah.
bonding is when you combine certain projects from different kind of groups or areas around town.
No,
No.
it's when you ask for more money than the CPC funds have, and they actually, so if you combine a whole bunch of projects and then it's more money, they could bond for it. But the cost you're gonna pay per year as a town
Oh.
is pretty small.
You're
Okay, so
borrowing.
we're talking about kind of a borrow or a lend. Okay,
Borrowing,
got it.
Yeah.
But right, so Alan came in because he's, we don't normally do it. And we have one thing bonded that ends in 2025, some land acquisition. But, you know, we're getting the go big comments. And I don't think this is that big, Alice. It's 2 projects that really support the town in terms of the bikeways. And I think it would get a lot of support. And we might not even have this money this year, Alice, until we talk to this, to the Cape Cod Commission, because they might say you need an engineering study done before you even can get to the next phase. So that 191 might be partially funded this year and then partially funded next year. And we won't know that until we find out what was included in their estimate
Mhm.
and what their timeline would be.
Yeah, I think where you lost me was combining with bandstand and various.
Because it's all considered rec. Because the buckets you're allowed for CPC, this all falls under the rec request,
Right,
recreation. So under the recreation, there's all these things that fall under recreation, and bike would be part of that ask under a recreation
I
request.
see, which, so I thought you were thinking that the grant request would be the combined,
No, it would all roll up though under like
Yeah.
Keep Orleans Outdoors. I mean,
Right,
sort of an ask all under rec, which is a nice, all of a sudden
Mm.
combined, bikeways works with recreation with,
yeah, no, that's great.
Mm.
okay. And so the only other thing I have in terms of bikes and is bike racks in the OCT areas. And I've worked with the Conservation Trust and we're waiting to hear back from the Orleans Conservation Committee to see what they think. But there are 10 locations that the OCT would love to have bike racks at. And so working with them, they gave me the locations, which I think would be great. And then when we do our little local Orleans bike map, we have places that you could go that are OCT owned and have locks for your bikes and be able to park them there.
Yeah.
When we looked at, because we couldn't put them in for the money we got from the state, because the state grants had to only go to state property.
Right, yeah,
Right.
we had asked about that. So Joan, are you thinking, is Steve O'Grady thinking of putting in a CPC request for?
I'm gonna work with him on it. So I'm gonna put it in with him
Okay,
jointly. And so it'll be done through the town. So we're already looking at it. I'm working with Alex and Steven on it and Steve Gass, who's on the OCT board. So Steve O'Grady, myself, and then Alex have met and they've already looked at the sort of racks that they would like. And they're not big ones, they're smaller. Actually, some are made of recycled plastic, which is so nice and just keeping with the whole
that's great.
look and feel of it.
I think that's
um,
awesome. So they will put in a request themselves as a separate grant application.
No, it's gonna come under the Bike and Roadway Committee. So it because it has our support. And then I'll work on it with them. So they're doing the legwork of also how much would it cost to install them on their property. So they're doing most of the work because I don't know, do you need a ditch? Do you need metal pipe? Like, I don't know what you need to install it, but those costs would have to be in there. So they're working on that and then we will write the grant together or they'll write it, we'll support it or something like that.
Yeah, so in the past, we, on our last grant, we sought letters of support, actually. Andrea Reed and Scott McDonald both wrote letters for us, and we're happy to write a letter of support for OCT. But I think as a committee, we should ask ourselves, is there a better strategy to support them in applying on their own than to intermingle their request, with ours? Because
Well, I brought the idea to them, so
No, they've actually been talking about this for quite some time, Joan. They asked if they could get in on that last bundle that we got from the state through Tom's grant application. And unfortunately, Tom said that they couldn't because they were not municipalities. So they've been talking about bike racks and placing them around at their locations for for quite some time. So I guess, you
Well,
know,
this was some emails that we just had recently, Alice, and went back and forth, and they came up with these 10.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it matters. I mean, I'm more than happy to work with Stephen and Alex on it and putting it together. I think partnerships work well. So
oh, I think that's awesome. I'm just wondering, you know, how likely is it for the, for two, well, you know, we can try it. Last time it was, I think, the hydration stations actually that your husband was spearheading, and we discussed it extensively with the select board or select board members. And it was determined that it would be better not to commingle those two applications, the one for our brochure and the one for the hydration station. That they'd be
the
more
hydration station was actually ended up being led by the select board.
That's right, because,
So they took it over. So that helped tremendously, because then you don't have a like who goes there, how many hands are on it.
well, that's
um,
right. And that came, just so you know, because you're new to the committee, that came as a result of discussing this very topic and determining that it would be better to have it be applied for through another group. So the select board volunteered to take it on, because we were advised that it would be more likely to both projects to be funded if they were coming from separate requests.
I'll check with the person I know, who lives right here. But the other thing we could do is we can ask Meth, since he sits on our board, right? Meth's our select person.
Yes.
Mhm.
You know, we can ask him, or we can ask Walter North, what's his opinion, if it should come from us or from OCT. I had the understanding that it was okay if it came from either, or if it came from both. Because
Were
they are
you- was-
expecting a whole bunch of things to come under that rec umbrella. So we can ask.
Yeah.
I don't
Does,
think- no.
Joan, does the rec committee have other asks they're making in addition to the bike racks? I mean,
Oh,
would
yeah,
the bike
they're
racks
going
fall
big.
more under rec than under bike and
I don't
pedestrian?
think it matters. It's all under the rec headline. So
Umbrella, yeah.
umbrella. So we're looking at lighted basketball court, pickleball court, some trails. They're like storybook trails that are on some property, and that we're going to work on with the library. Potentially, well, someone's looking at a rubberized track. We don't have all the costs back on everything yet, so we don't know at the end what it's going to roll up to. But some big projects, and with a lot of support from other folks. The lighted
Okay.
basketball court is the big ask. We're trying to we have a meeting scheduled for October 1st or 2nd to try to, there was a survey done last year and try to get more feedback from that survey. But there's about 5 or 6 opportunities that rec is looking at.
Okay.
Excuse me, Joan, I'm a little bit confused. These applications are filed to the town to fund or to the Cape Cod Commission?
No, so they're community preservation funds, and they're
Oh.
there every year. And there
Okay.
is a community preservation committee that then the applications get sent to, and then they get reviewed, and some get accepted and some don't. And you don't have to have all your ducks in a row when they're sent in. There's some time to go back and forth with it. But there's only certain categories that can get funded with these funds.
And
And
But
it's
these are funds that the town has
correct,
for
Yes.
such things.
It's
Yes.
allocated by the state, Peter. It's allocated by the state, and I believe the funding source might be from rooms and meals taxes. It's a way to redistribute, you know, tax income to the
Right.
towns for the purpose of
You-
these enhancing.
you vote on it as a town. Not every town has it.
Mhm.
And I think it's like, it's a 3%, but I could send you the link, Peter, and it actually, there's a great website that tells you, you know, what other towns use their funding for. That's how we found out you couldn't get sidewalks, because we
Right.
went on the link and it was clear that they wouldn't fund sidewalks. So there's a lot of rules that the state mandates, so you're using the money in the same way. And so that's what these are.
Yeah.
And every year,
So yeah,
there's,
if you would send me that link, that'd be great.
okay, great, I could do that.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
it's a great program.
And there's more funding this year, percentage-wise, than there was last year.
Mhm.
So we got that news on the last CPC meeting we had.
That's great.
Yeah,
So
one
that-
question that I had, Joan, is Joan just today sent us a document from the Cape Cod Commission, that document. And in that document, there was an article on people using bike and walking for schools more frequently, for a safe schools program and whatever. And in that, it referenced that the town of Harwich had received a $1 million federal grant. That perked my ears up when I saw that. I was like, wow, where do you go for that? I mean, that was some kind of, so I guess, where do we ask that question? Of the Cape Cod Commission or the
Yeah,
town of
so-
Harwich?
So the article, I don't believe all the 1 million came directly from Safe Routes to Schools, but some of it did. So we could certainly ask the commission what funding sources, if there were more than one, went into that $1 million grant. We've tried many times to engage the Orleans Elementary School in working with us to apply for a Safe Routes to Schools grant. Lindsay and I met with them a couple of times. I've gone on my own several times. And we offered to write the grant. They have not really been that interested in the program, not just the grant program, but in order to apply for the grant, you have to really be a bona fide Safe Routes to school. And the Orleans Elementary School was enrolled 2 years ago, by our efforts, but they've got to maintain certain activities in order to really maintain that status as a Safe Routes to school in order to allow for the funding. So if there's anybody, hi Libby, welcome to our meeting. If there's anybody who wants to reach out on their behalf to see if we can engage them, that would really be desirable. So
Reach out to who? To the elementary school?
the elementary school, yeah. We met with the principal, with the school nurse, and with the physical education teacher, Jeff. And they're all very positive, but it does require some follow through on the Safe Routes to Schools activities.
So that requires, I mean, where I look at Safe Routes to Schools as being more a function of the town and the DPW. I mean, the school is the school and it's within the school campus. I don't picture the school as having responsibility for walking paths and whatever to the school. I look at that as town infrastructure. But does that program in fact require that they be a part of that? I mean, I thought, yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
you have to take a look at this, and I would encourage you, it's a quick, it's not a deep read, but you'll get a lot of information by going to Safe Routes to Schools and mass.gov Safe Routes to Schools, but it's a national program. And
Right.
And basically, it does require the school to do some activities with the children to promote the concepts around, safe biking, safe walking, various things. They have an expectation of regular activities, I can't remember if it's monthly, and to do things. So you're absolutely right. It would not necessarily be up to the school to fund any infrastructure that was certainly not on school property. That's why the grant is available to help with some of those things.
Right.
So, but the first step is to get, real committed buy-in from the school to work on the required activities. And the state has a checklist. They don't give these things away for nothing. They expect some learning and some growth to go on in regards to safety. Libby knows quite a bit about Safe Routes to Schools. I don't know, Libby, you're welcome to add anything as a guest of our, we can unmute you.
I do recall that the day we had Safe Routes to School, I was anticipating a great crowd of people for that walk to the school, and it was probably fewer than 25.
outside folks.
Yeah, 25 school kids and parents included, and members of the Bike and Pedestrian Committee. And I know that Alice had worked hard to get commitment, but it just did not seem to be there. And I know trying to get the person, Erin, was that her name, from Safe School to go visit the school was another challenge. So it was just the local committee that tried to get the energy going, and it didn't fly.
We could certainly revisit that. Thanks, Libby. We certainly should revisit that because, you know, we part of our charge is education around safety for the kids.
Alice, I think it was because there was just so much that would have to get done. Like, you know, if you did it from the elementary school or the middle school, how many roads were included, or was it just so big they couldn't wrap their head around it, sort of thing?
No, you know, the expectation of the school ongoing activities are not that great. I don't want to try to recollect all of them, but trust me, you know, in the school district where I was a superintendent in Vermont, our schools were all safe routes to school schools. And it's not a difficult process or concept to integrate into your learning environment.
Yeah.
You know, so I would say we shouldn't segue too far into the safe routes to schools tonight because we want to, you know, be sure we
Go back.
think
Okay.
of the questions
Yeah.
for the kids. But it's a place that we should revisit and come back to. And I would encourage all three of our new members, you know, Stephanie's not as new as Joan and Peter. Just go on the Safe Routes to Schools website and you can get a sense of it. Check out the mass.gov link for Safe Routes to Schools so you don't get mired in the national piece so much, and you can see you know, what the expectation is. I think the only school around in our locale that's actively involved is the Brewster Elementary School.
Well, Harwich got $1 million for theirs, so I would think they must have too.
Yeah, you're right, Stephanie. They must be involved too. I don't, well, you know, as I said, I have no idea where that $1 million came from. It would surprise me if it was fully safe routes, but all of these things require combining, you know, grant sources because it's very expensive, as we see just from that one project, $191,000. That's a lot of money. So I'd like to go back to you. Stephanie and Joan did some great work in identifying the only two projects on our ranking sheet that could be fitting for the grant is the West Road. And I'd like to go back and take a look at the map for the Bay Ridge Road project. Maybe Peter and Lindsay have that fresh in their mind, but I don't. And I think we should, as Joan advised, we should certainly find out what's included in the estimate. I mean, is that sort of a implementation estimate?
We don't know. That's why, Alice, if you could ask, we can send some questions to you for the Cape Cod Commission for both of those projects.
Yes.
And what was included in both of them and what more would need to be included, and then what they think the timeline would be.
Yeah.
And George might also know that, and George has been very responsive to us, and we could ask George to help us if he knew that answer.
Yeah, that'd
But,
be great.
you know, I would, you know, if we have to vote on, should we pursue those, I would want to end this meeting saying we highly recommend that we pursue those two because they're available to pursue.
Yes.
Well, we're saying two, but in fact, when we look at the complete streets list, it's actually 4 items,
Right.
right?
But
It's
two, because a lot were wrapped around the same area.
P29, P18, P20, P29 are really kind of the same thing. And then P41. So we're saying two, but it's really 4 line items on this complete streets list.
Right.
When you talked to Tom about the West Road, did he give you any indication as to what he would do differently there?
No, but he agreed it's worth looking at. I don't know if you biked there a lot this summer. It was pretty much a mess. You know, whether or not it's different crossing ways or signs or, I don't know. And I don't know what Complete Streets put in there. So that's why we have to go back and really say what was part of that.
Yeah, we actually did ask that question because, you know, West Road, Tom worked on that fairly recently under the, you know, support and direction from our committee. And we had recommended green, you know, the green paint for the
Mhm.
bike lane. And he felt that that was too expensive for the town to do, so they just did the white sharrows. So I'm guessing that it's more, you know, more complete in that regard. Maybe it even includes a yellow traffic signal at the crosswalk to get over to Salty Ridge. So we can
Well,
ask
that's
that.
what we're hoping, Alice, that includes one of those flashing things, or two, because you also have the beginning of the road. You know, you come off the bike path, you cross over, or you cross over at Salty Ridge. But we'll talk to George because we just don't know where that number came from.
Yeah, I think the commission are, you know, Lev Malikoff, who's the, you know, technical
Engineer.
technical engineer, thanks, the commission will be able to answer that. So that question will be rolled into, you know, I think if you guys, if Stephanie and Joan have something more specific than, you know, what's included in the estimate, is the project, you know, ready to run out of the box with the work that they've done or will do. Send those to me and I'll send them right on to him immediately.
Can I add something here?
Please.
I happened to use that route today. And it's not too bad going towards the Brewster area, although some woman started taking the left way before the cross sign. But I actually brought it up as a concern at the last traffic study committee meeting. And there's a new gentleman in that organization called Prentice, who was an engineer with the town of Suffolk. He's really sharp.
Yeah.
Prentice.
And
Yeah, we just were talking about him before you came on.
oh,
Yeah.
funny. So he talked about how he had put a landing on the right when you're going towards Brewster and a rest area on the left when you're going towards Brewster. But I said, you know, it's treacherous because it's a curve coming from the Skakit Beach that way. And it's just really, you kind of, you know, cross your fingers and your toes and make a leap of faith when you take that left. And they put a pedestrian thing out there at one of those stanchions, but they didn't talk about this, but I didn't know it was on Complete Street. So good for
Yeah.
you. That's such a great choice. And
Yeah, I don't know, and Alice, maybe you know, but once they design this, do we get to see it before it's okay? Like Libby said, maybe that wasn't the right answer. You know, maybe something, you would look at it a different way. I don't know how many options you get.
Right.
You know, so we can ask George, and if you ask the Cape Cod Commission, you know, so what was included, but is it 2 rounds? Is it a couple of versions? Is it some designs? I think all that, and we'll put that in in an email to you, some of those extra questions.
Sure. Yeah, that'd be great. That'd be
Mm.
great. Well, excellent work.
Thank you. So that's what we have.
Yeah, and you know, ask I guess you could ask Rick, and then you know, we certainly can ask MEF, because MEF is on the Conservation Trust Board. If it's wise to include that as part of a package for us, or if it's better for OCT to just
Yeah, I'll
apply.
ask. I'll ask.
Yeah. Because actually, I'm guessing OCT can apply, but maybe they can't.
No, they can. We just were working together, and it just seemed like a nice synergy. You know, and Steve and I, and Steve, and we're all fine. So I'll just ask what the thing is to do.
Yeah, last year OCT put off their ask for the property down on what's the road, you know, the one going down toward in South Orleans. And I didn't know if they were going to be re-asking for those funds this year. They put it off last year because they wanted to make sure there was more space for the Open Space Committee project. And they didn't want to take up that, you know, have 2 asks for land. So I don't know if they're going to be going back asking for something large, like a piece of, you know, part of that property or not. So that would probably influence them.
Yeah, you're right. Well, Steve O'Grady is really the best one to know
Yeah,
what.
yeah, and I've been talking to him, so we'll be good.
That's great. Okay, so anything else in that regard with so the grant application should be available October 5. And I think when I reach out to, since, our meeting with them is now delayed, community meeting is not going to be until November. What I'm thinking we can also include in our reach out to the Cape Cod Commission is, what more would they recommend we include in the application? I'll ask them that question. They might have some engineering drawings or something. I don't know. We'll see what they
Yeah,
have.
whatever you can get.
Yeah.
And then Alice, that meeting it's moved to November 5th. The email you sent, it said it's at 4 o'clock underneath, the note you got from George. And I've been in some meetings recently where working parents are asking if the meetings could be pushed back. Because 4 o'clock is, I'm not in that category, but Lindsay, I don't know what you would say, but 4 o'clock is tough for people who
Yeah,
work.
that's a really good point. I thought you were asking that question about ours today at 4:30. So Joan, that time isn't set in stone. I thought you were asking
Okay.
about, I will let them know because I'm concerned about that as well.
Yeah.
We want to be respectful to the fact that, the folks from the commission and our own town employees, we don't want to end up keeping them too late. But on the other hand, the idea is to have public input. So do you think 4:30 is reasonable, or I think the last one that we did was at either 5 or 6 or something. I'd have to go back and look at our flyer.
Yeah, I think it makes more sense to have it after work for people, which is generally after 5, so 5:30 or 6. I mean, it also falls within dinner time, so you have to think about that, but
Yeah,
it makes more sense for it to be after work.
yeah. Of course, it's going to be Zoom. So does that make a difference? Because
No,
after parents
I
are,
think people still have to get home and unwind for a little bit and then get back on. I just think 4 is early.
well, I'll defer to the mother and the group of young children in the group.
I know. It's such a tough time of day anyway. I mean, you think about 7 o'clock and you're like, oh, okay,
Yeah,
that's
maybe we should do it at 2 o'clock nap time or something.
yeah, right.
But this is an important question because when parents are working at home, is the whole schedule and the kids' needs a little different? I don't know. Are they, Lindsay?
Well, I mean, I would imagine that if it would be one parent or the other, right? So if it's not a single parent family, we're talking about like one person's able to kind of get into a corner and look at their Zoom for a while. So I would say sometime after work, like 5:30 would probably be the best.
Okay.
And then the rest of the family can be doing something else. I would just imagine that would work best for most people.
Okay, why don't I propose that to them and see what they say? That would be, a proposal for both George and the commission folks to see what they think. Has anybody else got an opinion in regards to the time?
5:30 or 6. Yeah, 5:30 or 6.
Okay.
I know it's a challenge for the people that are working during that time, but it's also a one-time thing. It's specifically a public meeting, so people should be able to attend. It's not like, when town meetings happen and they're in the middle of the day, or I mean, it really negates all the people that are working
Yeah, you're
being
absolutely.
able to attend. So let's just make this.
We'll ask for, and 6 o'clock actually seems better than 5:30, right?
Yeah, perhaps it is.
Well, so why don't we ask for 6, and then if they try to compromise back to 5:30 or something, but we'll say that absolutely 4 o'clock is way too early.
Yeah.
Okay. So what else?
Alice, this is Stephanie. I may have asked you this before, you may have answered it, but I've forgotten it. When you were doing the grant application for the complete streets, was that all submitted through the town administrator, through John Kelly? Is he the one that submitted everything for the grant application to the state?
Yeah, so the way that worked is what we first had to submit, there's several steps that need to take place. And the very first step is to have some town employees trained in complete streets. And so that was done actually, I think, under Libby's leadership, maybe no, it wasn't. So in between us, I can't even remember. But Tom Daly and his assistant, not Ron, he's new-ish. I can't even remember the guy's name. But anyway, Tom and his assistant went to a state training.
Yeah.
And then the next thing that we needed to do was we needed to submit a policy. We needed to have the select board pass and approve a policy. And that took quite a bit of work and a lot of political activity for, and we, to the select board's a great
Yeah. Okay.
support. They agreed to this, and so that was adopted in January 15th of last year.
Mhm.
And then once that's submitted, then you can apply for the technical assistance grant. And that came from, actually from George. And I believe it was just it's a simple online, the town now is given entry into a portal which provides all the documents and all the timelines and things directly to the town employee that's kind of been assigned this, and that's been George. Now,
Okay.
since we got the technical assistance grant and we started the process with the Cape Cod Commission, Scott McDonald has assumed some responsibility for the implementation phase and for sort of documenting as projects get done, you know, how have we met the complete streets criteria? So
And
that
what
hasn't
is
started yet.
what is Scott McDonald's title? Who is
Well,
he with?
He's the
What?
chief of police
Chief of police.
in
Okay.
Orleans, yeah. And he heads that traffic and parking committee.
Okay.
And
All right,
he's
good.
a huge supporter of complete streets and has been very supportive of this committee every step of the way as we've tried to improve safety. And Tom has been very supportive. Everyone's been really supportive. But again, there's been a lot of, you know, you just have to keep kind of plodding along to be sure things don't get kind of lost by the roadside.
Yeah.
That's been our job on our committee.
Yeah.
So it's been a team effort.
Yeah. I mean, the grant application, from what I can tell, for the ADA grant for the 250,000 a year, there's the three requirements the town already meets, and that is that I mean, you have to have a person who is your ADA coordinator, and we do. You have to have, you know, your hiring practices have to state something, and I forget what the third one is. You have to have something in place, so if someone is having a problem, they can make a complaint. So you have to have those three things. But once you have those three things in place, it isn't something that you have to have training. You have to have, I mean, it's very simple. You just go in and you make the grant application. So it's nowhere nearly as complex as what you're talking about you had to do with complete streets. And so I'm just wondering, I mean, I guess October, what did I say, October 5th or October 9th is a stretch for anything. But it, you know, it just seems like all of these things take so many years from the time we start. And I'm quite old, and I'd like to see some of these things
No, but Stephanie,
start to get done quickly, more
Right,
quickly.
right.
And,
Well, listen.
well, we won't apply this year, we'll apply next year. Well, then that gives us another year to do a plan. Then that gives us enough.
Is it a rolling application admissions, or is it only once a year? Do you know?
I believe it's just once a year, but let me verify that. He had said the deadline
you
was
know,
October 9th.
But when you think about it, I mean, we are still a bit of a way from identifying the projects that the community wants to support through this process.
That's correct.
I think,
But-
and I was actually a little reluctant to have you guys do too much work on going through all of the projects and organizing them, because frankly, the last word is not going to be ours. It's going to be the community, through the community forum, as it really should be. Now, we'll be influential in that, there's no doubt about it. But I think because you identified that there's really only 2 projects that are fitting, it takes that other 50 out of the ranking. We should
Right.
go ahead and move forward on those 2 projects with the Community Preservation Fund project. As far as the ADA, what I would see happening is, once we identify the top priority projects through Complete Streets, and one of those projects becomes the project that we request funding for through the Complete Streets funding program, which is
Yeah.
$400,000, we can apply for the ADA grant to offset some of the cost. And it probably, I understand your impatience, because trust me, I've been there, done that, and so has Libby and everybody else on the team and in every committee, but we're probably going to be right aligned in the timeline, right? Because by the time this all takes place, it probably won't be until spring before that final ranking of the Complete Street is approved by the state.
So Alice, I have a question on when you're saying the community is going to have the final say. How many people do you need to come to the meeting? Because the first Complete Streets meeting a year ago, you had, I don't know how many people you're expecting, but I thought it was a nice showing. I just went as a citizen.
Yeah.
So I'm just wondering.
We have no control over that, Joan. But the process is that we openly encourage and advertise for this, that we hold the meeting, and whoever's there is going to influence the ranking. I mean, I don't think that we're going to acquiesce to,
Oh, no. I was just wondering if there was if people couldn't go, is there another way for them to comment? Is there another way to get input other than having to come to the meeting? I'm just trying to figure out how to garner more involvement, I would say, and more community interest in it.
Well, we could suggest that, and again, we'd have to, be mindful of the timeline. I have not gotten a firm answer, because the deadline that I saw for our application for this round was November 2nd. And I'd been pushing for this community meeting for quite some time now. So when I got the response that, okay, now it's going to be November 5th, I frankly have been quite concerned, and I posed the question, so what does that do to the timeline? I have not received an answer, to tell you honestly. So that right now is a little unsettling, and it's out of my hands. I'm just trusting that the process is going to work. So we'll see. Maybe because of, I don't have access to the portal. I don't know, is the state granted us an extension? I have not gotten an answer to that question, and that question has been raised. So that's all I can say about that. But, what we'll do is we'll go through the required process. We'll hold the meeting. We'll see what the results are. I have all the confidence in the work of all the people, including all of you, who will, I'm sure, be at the meeting, that will come up with the best projects to agree to rank. And that number 1 ranked project, if it's not Bay Ridge or West Road, will be the project that becomes the first grant request for the Complete Streets grant. And then the following year, we're welcome to apply again.
And then,
there was,
Could I ask a question?
Sure.
Do you have a way to contact you via email on your website, right? Ask the board. I think there's a way to ask you a
Yes.
question on. Well, that would be a way, if people couldn't attend, maybe they could express their opinion. But I wanted to let you know, Alice, that I heard back from Lower Cape TV, and they're very interested in chatting with you.
Oh, good.
You can put a bulletin up on their bulletin board. And I was thinking, like, to announce the meeting. I felt badly because they gave you the lead, and then I couldn't get them to answer me. So I called and talked with Therese Martin today, and she was very interested. So I'm thinking, well, you're talking about this community meeting. It's just another way, all directions to get the word out.
Yeah,
So that's why I came, just to share that.
I tried to find the contact information as you did on the web and couldn't. So if you could send me that, thanks for the detective work. I'll
Yeah,
call her, and that will be a good way to publicize the meeting if she can have an interview or something before.
yeah. She said they're not doing PSA days, but they will schedule an appointment on a specific day due to COVID, probably after school hours. But she seemed enthusiastic.
Great, love it. All right.
Now, Alice, this is Stephanie. Being quite new on the committee, I was never familiar with the town's definition of a laid out street versus a non-laid out street. Is that something that the committee has always been aware of?
The difference in the two?
Yes.
Or, yeah, I mean, we're aware that there's not many, I think there's only a couple of laid out town roads in the town. And
Right.
those, yeah,
All right, and those are the ones that have 15 feet on either side that the town owns, as opposed to all of the other streets where the town only owns to the edge of the street, and it would require a land taking in order to put any kind of a sidewalk or anything on it. And the ones that we know of, I think Main Street, Tonsett Road.
Beach Road,
Not Beach Road is not laid out, no.
it's not laid out, right? It
No.
would require taking of land.
Taking of land, right.
Well, you
But
know,
Main Street, Tonsett Road, and I know that, I'm trying to remember the name of the other, Finley Road is laid out. But most town streets aren't. So whenever you're talking about doing anything on most streets, you're talking about huge expenses for land taking.
well, you know, this is another whole conversation for another day because it's a really important one, but it's a big one. And
Yeah,
please, Stephanie, I can't verify that it's 15 feet on either side. You're talking 15 feet from the center line?
maybe it is.
Yeah.
Is that, I know it's like a good distance from the edge of the pavement, might be 15 feet from the center line. Do
Yes.
you remember what it was, Joan?
You know, I think.
I don't see Joan lately. I think Joan might have dropped off.
The problem is that.
Sorry, I don't know what the number was, other than there's a lot of streets that are not laid out. There's many streets that are laid out, and it all got very confusing.
Yeah, so the
Yeah.
the streets that are non-laid out, you know, it's not clear what actually the town controls, because a lot of them have become sort of grown up with, there's a variety of things. I think I sent you guys the slides that I showed to the select board in regards to the Tonsett sidewalk, did I? Okay, so last week I spoke to the select board. I had notified you that I was going to give them a complete streets update. And one of the things I did was I included in the discussion with them 3 pictures that I took of the sidewalk on
Yeah.
Main Street. Yeah, in front of the Playhouse and going basically all along and past the Playhouse. And the point that I wanted to make for them was that some of the abutters have been conscientious in keeping their shrubbery and their grass and whatever from overgrowing on that sidewalk, which is a treacherous sidewalk to begin with. It's cracked, it's got holes, etc. But it's made even more treacherous because you cannot even see where your foot lands when you walk on it in some places. So the plea was to try to encourage people to keep their, and the same thing holds true on a lot of the roadways. So this is a long discussion, and I think that we should put it on the agenda for another time, maybe for next month. But it's a problem. I'm not completely convinced that it's not attainable because it will be too costly and that will require a taking. I think the first step is actually to try to find out what is actually available to the town underneath all of that grass and everything else. And Tom Daly has been, that's why you see Beach Road wider, Joan, as you mentioned, it's better than it
Yeah.
was.
Yeah, he
Because
improved that. Yeah,
because
he-
he improved it by scraping away and finding what is in fact town road underneath some of that stuff. So, you know, basically they're paved over horse and buggy trails from, you know, the 1800s, for heaven's sakes, or horse paths from the 1700s, so some of them. So it's complicated, but anyway, let's not stray too far. Let's put that on the agenda for another meeting. And let's have the questions come for the Cape Cod Commission in regards to the two projects. Let's move forward. I will take a vote to see what kind of support we have for moving forward with the Community Preservation Fund to seek funding for the West Road and Bay Ridge projects, pending some conclusive information from the, or maybe not pending, but including conclusive information from the Cape Cod Commission?
I would just like to maybe adjust what you just said a little, Alice. I think upon hearing from the Cape Cod Commission, we'll know which way we have to proceed, if it's for a survey or for the total project.
Right.
So what is the motion?
It's to pursue the West Road and the Bay Ridge projects, but we'll take our direction from the Cape Cod Commission of whether or not we have to pursue it as a survey, or we can go ahead and pursue it as the full project.
So
So until we,
dependent, okay.
depending on what they tell us, because we don't know what was in that,
When
those
you-
estimates.
When you say survey, you mean sort of an engineering study? Is that what
Right.
you're saying?
Yes, yeah, an engineering survey, yeah.
Yeah, because one of them, there goes, there's no existing, other than like a worn path, there's no existing for P41. There is no existing trail.
Mhm.
So you have to know, you have to do a lot to get to that. That's, you know,
Yeah,
it's
So once you
it's
hear back-
town-owned land, but it isn't set out, it isn't engineered.
and then Alice, I guess the thing would be, we could ask for it, it might be more than the amount that's listed then, because we might have to ask for the money for an engineering study and then the money for the project itself. And that's where we'd need the Cape Cod Commission to tell us what it is.
Right, and so my question to them will simply be a statement that we want to pursue funding for those two projects through the Community Preservation Fund. And could they be specific in terms of what exactly would that
Right.
$191,000 and $36,000 pay for?
Right.
And we're interested in, yeah, and we need to know whether we need an engineering study to go forward or whether, you know, so we'll get that from them.
And
But-
timeline, Alice, if you could, like
Yeah.
how long it would all take, that would be great.
Yeah, and if you have further questions, if you two could send those to me, no, so that's it.
That's it. That's
Okay.
exactly what we
We'll
need.
email
Yeah.
them, you know, either later tonight or tomorrow, so we get moving on that. So let's have, Joan, do you want to go ahead and make that motion so Stephanie can get it accurately?
Sure.
And we'll take-
So the motion is that we're going to go forward to pursue CPC funds for the project on Bay Ridge, and then the projects that are associated with West Road. And we're only going to go forward once we have the understanding of what is included in the complete street study. And we'll take our direction from the Cape Cod Commission of what we should apply for.
Okay.
Okay.
Are you
Does
good
that make
with
sense?
Stephanie, do you want to read it back? Or are you good?
No, I'm gonna go back and listen to the recording, to tell you the truth.
Okay, so we have the motion. Can we have a second? It was made by Joan.
The only thing that I'd like to add to that motion is we keep saying the two projects, but in terms of the Cape Cod Commission, it
It's for,
is
it's right.
4 line items
Right,
on
right,
the
right.
complete street
Right.
study. So
Right.
I don't want that to be
Yes.
too
Yeah,
confusing.
great. But you gave me the numbers. I'll go back and look. The Bay Ridge Road, it was one, it's P41, right?
Right. The other ones
P41.
are P29,
Three,
P18,
29,
and
18,
P20.
and 20.
Right.
Yeah.
Great.
And you have until November 29th or 20,
No, well, we really should have this information back so that we could
23rd.
fill out the form on October 5th, so that I could then, at our next bike committee meeting, everyone can look at it and approve it.
Yeah. And you know, I'll ask them any documentation that would be useful to us to submit with our grant app, because the grant application is a pretty simple form,
Yeah.
honestly.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
then it would be good for us to get a couple of letters of support, and we can certainly ask for a letter. I'm sure we could have a letter from Meth and maybe a letter from Scott or Tom or something.
Yep, we'll get letters from all of them, yep.
Okay, great. So the motion was made by Joan. It was seconded by
I'll second it.
Okay, all those in favor? With a roll
Aye.
call, Stephanie,
Aye.
Peter,
Aye.
Lindsay,
Aye.
Joan,
Aye.
and Alice, aye. Great, so a unanimous vote on that. That's awesome. Thank you so much for your good work. This is exciting. So finally, the Complete Streets update, I think we sort of rolled into this meeting. It's really to get ready for that forum. And last time the Cape Cod Commission had made a lovely brochure for us. We edited it a bit because it was a little bit, verbose, and we made it a little more succinct and clear, and we posted it. We took copies. Each member had about 20 copies, which we distributed to friends, and we had additional copies which we posted in public places, the library, the Friends Market, various places around town, the bike shops, etc. So I've made that request to the Cape Cod Commission. Will there be a brochure available soon? We'd like to assist in sending out notices. So as that comes, I'll send to you. I believe George Maservi's administrative assistant printed them for us. They were color at the town hall, and then we each picked up bundles, and then we were responsible for those. So I'll keep you posted on what I hear. Hopefully we'll get something very soon because time is marching on. And then for the agenda for next time, it sounds as though we have two big things to follow up on: the CPF grant and Complete Streets. Anything else? We do want to at some time, I know Stephanie's, I suppose we could, that's going to be pretty time consuming, but maybe we should also add the safe routes to schools. What is it that you folks would like to add in addition to the agenda?
Well, to me, the thing that, you guys, over the years, you've gotten a great handle on the Complete Streets and the funding for the Complete Streets, and you've gone way into the process. I've only kind of glazed the surface of the whole ADA thing. So I'd like to investigate that some more, see what is available, what should be done, what the processes is, how it would mesh together. And then also do some more investigation on what is it that comprised that $1 million grant that Harwich got.
Yeah.
And so to me, I had gone to George and asked him, does the town have a grant writer? Or is it done just department by department and just assigned to whoever needs to write and of course, that's what it is. There is no central focus for grant writing, which to me, the town is probably missing, maybe not, I don't know. But
certainly a grant writer is a huge asset to any organization. There's no question about it.
Yeah.
Well, do you want us to put on the agenda for next time a report from you on new findings for ADA grant opportunities?
Well,
you ready for that, or?
Yeah, on ADA, I've already exhausted some of them. I have not done anything on a federal. So I would do the state ADA, which I've already begun on, and see what other federal ones I can find.
Okay.
Wait. I think we're gonna have too much on the agenda for next meeting though, because if we really have to work on how the Zoom meeting's gonna work for Complete Streets, Alice, and then talk about the CPC stuff, maybe we want to get that done with that since that has a timeline, and then wait till the following month to take Stephanie up on the ADA stuff and change our
Okay.
focus.
Yeah, because there's no timeline that's essential on any of that right now. So
We'll
you
put
probably
that
right.
on the
Yeah.
November. We'll put
November,
that on
yeah.
that in November.
Right.
And maybe we'll include Safe Routes to Schools. Their grant becomes, I think that's due in December. But we may not be able to handle that. I think we have an awful lot on our plate. So I will follow up with the Cape Cod Commission on the two tasks that I have. sometimes, Stephanie, I'm gonna send to Peter, Stephanie, and Joan the PowerPoint presentation that we did for the select board and planning board on complete streets. That'll give you a good kind of thumbnail sketch and overview to really get yourselves kind of oriented. That will help.
Thank you.
Mhm.
And Stephanie, Lindsay and I used to both, when we do minutes, separate out tasks that people were assigned to and put in the minutes, in sort of bold. I think we'd say task, and then we'd identify who was responsible, so that quickly you all could look and see, oh yeah, I've got to do this or I've got to do that. So you might want to do that. So for example, a task for me is to contact the Cape Cod Commission. Number one, on the questions relative to the CFP grant, and number two, on the flyer for the program. Your assignment is the ADA grant. I don't know if we gave any other assignment. Joan's going to contact Steve O'Grady to see if he needs support for the bike rack, application. So those are the kinds of things. And that way, when each of us are looking at the minutes, it sort of sticks out right at
Yeah,
us.
what our assignment is.
Read and
Yeah,
say,
but on the ADA grant, we're saying that's now November as
Yeah.
opposed to October, right?
Right, yep, but you can put
Okay.
it in the minutes, and then it's a nice record to be able to go back
Right.
and look and say, oh yeah, we agreed in August or September to put this on the November agenda.
Okay. All right.
Great. Super good work.
Did anyone else, that was really a good summary you just gave just then, Alice. I've got yours, mine, Joan's. Were there any other assignments to anyone else that we just talked about?
I'm gonna send the PowerPoint to you three.
Okay, Alice is sending the PowerPoint.
I already
Okay.
sent the link to the CPC to Peter while we're on the
Thank you.
phone.
Thanks,
Good.
Joan.
Good. Great. Okay, and I have a form I used to use for action minutes. I can send that to you, Stephanie. You don't have
That'd be
to.
great.
The
Okay.
way, if you look at Lindsay's past minutes, which are on our website, or Lindsay can send you, a couple copies to sort of see the way we do it.
Okay,
It's really pretty easy. The action minutes are, all I expect, and I think all that's required by law, is that you record any vote accurately.
yeah,
You record the motion, and then you record the vote. And then I always like to be sure that any decisions are made are very clear in the minutes. And oftentimes we'll just put decisions made and then just bullet them so that it's really clear, what the decisions, tasks, and anything that was legally voted.
I have a question, Alice. Libby, who was just on and then left,
Yeah.
is she part of the team?
Libby had been the chair for a short time when this thing was this Bike and Pedestrian Committee was reconstituted in 2017. And she couldn't continue on the committee because she had other obligations, but she's been sort of an ad hoc partner. And Betsy Hicks has also agreed to continue to support us in any way with help if we need them. So yeah, so she was an attendee today, but I unmuted her and gave her permission to join in on discussion, but we don't normally
I
do
was
that.
going to say, I think I was at another meeting where someone from the public wanted to comment during the meeting, and you had to do some different bylaw things. So I'm just wondering how this works, because
Well, it's up to the chair to, in terms of the open meeting law, the meeting is open to the public, and it's up to the chair to determine who can speak and who can't speak,
Okay.
and for how long. For example, I would be really reluctant to open up speaking to people who didn't reside in Orleans unless they were an expert that we had invited. But yeah, I mean, if you guys have any objections to that, you should certainly.
no,
let me
I didn't have
know.
an objection. I just didn't know. I was at a
What her
different.
connection was.
Right, I didn't know what her connection was. It was great. Having her on was great. But if you had 4 people, then do you decide who could join or not join? It was more of a process.
Yeah, and typically, and yesterday when I was on planning board, I don't know if Zoom has changed its format, but there used to be a hand raising mechanism. Now that might be turned on and off by Sarah, who monitors this thing, and I can ask Sarah.
I
because
could
don't
answer right
see
now
it.
if you want.
Oh, Sarah, are you there? Oh,
I
hey,
am.
you've been listening to the.
Yeah,
So
so we switched over to the webinar platform, and people are able to raise their hands still. So if they have a question, and then
Yes, so, but I don't see the, where do I see that?
usually you can see it like if you look down where it says participants in your like taskbar, for lack of a better term, on Zoom.
Yeah,
You can pop it up to the side, and then you can see the panelists, and then there's a tab for attendees.
yes, I see that. That's how I knew Libby was here, but then how do I know if she wants, she just has to raise her hand literally on.
Yeah.
Yeah,
On the right-hand side, Alice, it says invite, mute me, raise hand under your participants, if you open up that box.
oh yeah, raise hand, huh, oh, huh. I didn't even notice that, that's great, there I am. So she could have done that too, huh, Sarah? Would Libby have access to raise your hand?
Yes, our attendees have the ability to raise their hand
Okay, great,
as well. So
super. Okay, well, great meeting, everybody. Is there anything else before we sign off and let Sarah go to dinner? All of us?
I don't think so.
All right, well, thank you for all your good work and great conversation, and we will be seeing you soon. We will adjourn, Stephanie, at, what is it, 5:59?
Yeah, I'll make a motion that we adjourn.
Excellent. Second?
Anyone want, okay?
I'll second that. Lindsay.
Thanks. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right,
Aye.
That's good enough. Great. Thank you, guys. Have a wonderful evening. You'll be getting
you.
an email from me.